Now gathered as a committee of the whole. I call the meeting to order. Is there any declaration of interest, pecuniary or otherwise? Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And I do need to make a declaration on item 6C, PDR-CW-13-21, the SkyDev Plan of Condominium Report.
And the reason for the declaration?
On the basis that I have an ownership interest in a portion of the parcel of land under consideration.
Thank you very much. Is there any other declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, I would just say that if one does arise during the course of the meeting, I would ask you to make your declaration at that time. Okay, item number 3A is we're at 10:14. Madam Clerk, I'm just gonna maybe check in with you. We have two delegations. I know one had to cancel, but the other one was scheduled for 10:15. I'm just looking at the schedule. It's now pretty much 10:15.
Yes.
Would it be the preference that we deal with the delegation and then maybe go back to the business, regular business?
If council is amenable to that, that would be ideal. Mr. Wilson had to cancel this morning and we're going to rebook him, but Gemma Mendez-Smith has joined us.
Okay, well, with that said, then I think I would maybe be respectful to our guest. Gemma is here. I don't see her in my list here, but is she present?
Yes, I am, Council Warden.
Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Always a good thing when you're here. So if you're ready to go, I would say that you have the floor.
Thank you. And am I allowed to share my screen?
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much, Warden and Council members, for the opportunity to share with you what we've learned a little bit this year through our research. I am going to share just a few things that we've discovered and spend most of my 5 minutes with you talking about the prevalence of, we wanted to understand what the prevalence of the precarious employment was in our region. And really looking at how basically what we might do to build responses through what we understand. And just starting very quickly with the unemployment rate, we wanted to kind of talk about this. It's such a top of mind topic at this time. We have been predominantly and for a long time been in a really low unemployment situation where we had seen in 2018 3.7% unemployment rate, but in 2020 we saw a 7.2% unemployment rate. And when we look at that, of course, the pandemic had a lot to do with that. So we were looking, though, when you have a chance to read the local labor market plan, you will see that we have seen some economic recovery in some of our industries and sectors, but not all. And so some are continuing to struggle through that. And we wanted to kind of look just briefly on employment insurance beneficiaries, just looking at how that may have changed between 2019 and 20 to give us a sense of how people might be able to ride through or survive through this pandemic period that we're experiencing. And so those numbers are showing that, of course, we had a significantly, as time went on, we had some significant numbers of people receiving insurance benefits, EI benefits through that pandemic period. And one of the things that I will say here very quickly is that we do see a segment of our population that is experiencing more challenges, and that I will point to the more marginalized groups, including women and marginalized individuals, persons with disabilities, really experiencing the brunt of what's happening in the labor market through this pandemic. So a lot more to talk about there, but certainly conversations that can continue to happen around how we might build strategies for people to re-enter into the workforce after the pandemic. Some of the work that we did through 2020 as well was to talk to people in our community about the impact of COVID-19. We had 2 surveys, and I'm sharing just briefly with you today the the phase 2 report. We had over 350 50 people respond to the survey, and we asked very specific questions about how this pandemic was affecting them. And we also asked questions back in June. But what we wanted to share with you is that precariously employed individuals seemed to have suffered the most, and we wanted to compare those from that report with you. So what we're seeing is precariously employed individuals are more likely to be younger in our region, have lower levels of education, and approximately 1 in 4 of those respondents have at least one dependent. And so we're seeing the ability to work from home and care for children or dependents, and homeschooling and schooling from home, not homeschooling. These are taking a toll on our individuals in our community that are more precariously employed. So things that we need to think about as we're building strategies moving forward. The employment characteristics of these precariously employed people are more likely to have part-time or self-employed income. That's because before COVID-19. So COVID-19 has really affected their ability to continue to be sustainable. They were more likely to report a loss of work due to COVID. They were more likely to report that their COVID-19 has impacted their ability to meet financial obligations. And these are the last two that some of the conversations we've been having recently around the idea of remote work and how that will play out. I think we need to look to this group of individuals, the precariously employed, because they are less likely to report being able to work from home, and less likely to have confidence in their ability to work from home. So while working from home may present a good option and opportunity for others, we also need to think about that group of people that continue to be precariously employed in our region and how those ideas will affect them. And so those are the responses we had from people who through responding through that COVID-19 impact. And the other things we saw was that mental health piece. A lot of people were talking about their physical and mental health. That was really high on the charts both for themselves and for persons that are in their care and in their families. So really looking at how do we help people through that struggle with the mental health pieces. Now, the third, and I know I'm going very quickly, but I just wanted to give you as much as I could while I have you as a captive audience. And the third piece of work that I want to share with you today is this report that we took on. And I will have to say a lot of the push for understanding the prevalence of precarious employment in this region came from Grey County and Bruce, but mostly Grey through the work of the Poverty Task Force, the Children's Alliance, and the leadership that's happening there. We've had many conversations with those groups over the years, and it's always, let's talk more about this idea of precarious employment. In our world, in the workforce development world, we look at this as, okay, can you get to work? What are the barriers? Transportation and so on. But as we talk to our partners, there's a lot more that happens in someone's life that really affects that causes them to be precariously employed or enter into that situation. So this over 24-page report gives us a lot of data. And I wanted to start off by saying that the purpose of this research, this particular piece of research, was to understand and measure the prevalence of precarious employment in our 4-county region, and thereby being able to have a benchmark where we can then move forward and build those plans around. So to start off, between 2010 and 2019, the 4-county region had a greater proportion of part-time workers than the average, or than the Ontario average. And we also had a long-term 60+ months or more of part-time employment with the same employer. And that is more prevalent in the 4-county region than it is across Ontario. So the other piece that speaks to that, though, is that compared to Ontario, we have more people in our region choosing to work part-time. And I will tell you that this is one of the conversations we've had at those tables. Because someone is employed part-time, we can't assume that they're precariously employed. So that's one of the things we really wanted to understand through this report. Is it that everyone who's part-time employed in our region, precariously employed? And the answer is no. A greater proportion of our 4-county region workers in that part-time segment are choosing to work part-time and for personal reasons. And so there are charts in the report that actually give you those percentages. So we know that not everyone in our region is part-time employed. That's good to understand. What we learned from this research as well is that self-employment represents approximately 1 in 5 workers in our region, to a tune of 31,800 self-employed individuals in 2019. And the second part to that is what we're seeing is this self-employment it really shows up in agriculture. That's our biggest segment of self-employment. It's really showing up in agriculture. So as we're talking about self-employed people being really significantly affected through COVID-19, we're looking at that segment of our population within agriculture. So it's really a lot of information that we've broken down to get a good handle on where should we put our focus when we're talking about addressing self-employment in our region, or any of the precariously employed situations. And this slide speaks to families in our region. And so the incidence of low income, and so what we use to measure this, there are two measures we could use, and we went with the federal government measure of low income measure as opposed to what you might have seen in the past, the LICO, which is the low income cutoff. We just used a different data set because we wanted to get more deeper and richer information. And what that showed us is that the incidence of low income couple families ranges from 6.2% in Grey County, which is our highest, to 4.9% in Perth, and of course comparing that to the province at 10.6%. So what we're seeing is Grey County has low income family couples at 6.2%, but while it is lower than the province, it is highest in our region. And when we looked at more detailed information about that loan, so the loan, no, sorry, I have to find the right page, sorry about that. So the Grey County had 1,450, so 1,450 low income measure couple families, and them consisting of over 4,000 individuals in those families. And so here's some of the breakdown of this information. These families had a median after-tax income of $26,450. So you're seeing that there are families living in Grey County that have that income. So over 4,000 individuals are living with an income of $26,450 in Grey County. Grey County also had 1,160 low-income measure lone parent families, comprising of 3,100 individuals with a median after-tax income of $24,550. And of course, again, it is still lower. Grey County is still lower than the provincial average, but it is the highest in our 4-county region. And then thirdly, we looked at the incidence of low income lone parent family, and that ranges from 33.3%, again, Grey County topping that chart, and compared to 32. And of course, in this instance, we're seeing where Grey County is a little bit higher in that low income, a lone person income. And I'll give you the details for that. So in Grey County, the number of low income measure non-family persons was 4,740, with a median after-tax income of 15,750. So those numbers speak to us about when we look at what's happening right now through the pandemic and what was happening even before the pandemic, the rising costs of housing, the fact that we need to talk about how we're going to provide transportation to get to those jobs that are available in our region. And so we need to really look at this report as to what can we do, how can we do that well, and why are families in these situations and how do we help them? And I think one of the things I would like to bring up at this point is some of the thoughts around what do we do now, and how do we meet the worker needs for employers? And I did recently send a letter to our warden to talk about, first of all, the 4-county labor market planning board, through the work that we do, the support for the gray transit route. We love that. I will say, I'll start by saying that. And the reason why I say we love this is we know that as we work with individuals, that a lot of the individuals we work with through our Connect to Skills program falls within this category of people. They're either not working or they're precariously employed and they're looking for opportunities. The barriers we run into is that the jobs that are available may not always be available where people live. So how do we get them to where those jobs are available? And how do we continue to do that? And we've used the Grey Transit route. We were able to successfully use it. It is affordable. And the one thing that I will bring as a barrier, and something that we as a community need to be thinking about, is really how do we make that more reliable and long-term. And I'll give you a very quick example. We had someone who used the transit for training. This was an individual who had in Grey County, an individual from Grey County, had absolutely no computer skills. So we needed them in our space, and we practiced our COVID protocols. They were able to get on that bus in the morning, show up for class on time, leave after the class was done, and get back home. That was amazing. But that was only offered for 2 days. The person was, and so we did other things in between. The place that they could find work was out of their community, where they could easily take a taxi or bike or walk. And because the transit route wasn't available for 5 days a week, they were not able to take that opportunity. And so while it's fantastic, I'll start by saying that it is fantastic. We do need to look at how do we continue to support people that need that transportation to get to work. We are speaking, one of the conversations I had with an employer in Grey County is, it's a great idea. I know we have it, but can we rely on it? Can we have confidence in it? And those are the questions we as a community would need to answer as we're working with employers and how we meet those needs. So connecting people with the skills, and part of what we do, part of what our other employment services do, like the Y employment services and Leeds employment, this is what we need to address as a community and to get to the people where they need to work. So we have situations where people are living in communities where they may not have a good reputation, but they're ready to change that. And for us to give them a chance, we want to be able to have that opportunity to share, to get them to where they need to be, and that may be outside of their community, to build their capacity. So the last thing I wanted to mention to you is that based on this precarious employment work, we quickly realized that there's more work to be done. But this work is not around research. This work is about identifying who people are, what the stories look like in our community. And again, our partners are intended to be the Poverty Task Force and other groups. Social Services has been amazing, Grey County Social Services, in working with us through some of these challenges. We work as a partner as a partnership to get people to where they need to be. So it's happening, but can we be more efficient and effective in what we do? And thank you, Barb and her team, for the wonderful partnerships that we're able to have. But this Precarious Living series is us saying precarious employment or precarious living exists in rural communities. Here's what it looks like, and here's what we need to do to help move that along. And so you will see a lot of the talk around precarious living coming out, so we can look at all the facets that affect people's lives in rural communities. And we hope that we look forward to engaging with the county to be able to do this work effectively. And I'd like to say thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Gemma. We can always count on you to be lively and to continue sounding the drums, of course, on affordable housing and transportation. We've been hearing that theme from you over and over again. I wonder if I might ask a question. And could we go back to the main screen so I can see if there are other hands as well, please? But Gemma, I wonder if you, and this may not be a fair question, but I'll ask it in any case, and you tell me if it's unfair. You are precariously employed when what?
Oh, that is a good question. And I have a definition. And actually we use the definition from the federal government. And So someone is considered precariously employed if they are part-time employed, including both duration and reasons for part-time, temporary employment, and with the threat of permanent layoffs, self-employed, and the low income measures of both the individuals and the families. So when Stats Canada looks at someone and talks about precarious employment, it's the fact that they may, so I will actually say this, and you might be completely surprised. I am precariously employed. I don't consider myself precariously employed, but the reason why I'm precariously employed is I have a contract with my employer and it ends every March. So if the provincial government decides that they're not giving us funding come April 1st, 2022, I no longer have a job. So I am precariously employed. And so it moves on for people who are self-employed, who may not always have steady income, part-time employment when you cannot meet your financial obligations through employment, those will all be considered precariously employed.
Thank you for that. And Gemma, I would just say, I know that you will always have a job.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Potter, you're next.
Thank you, Gemma, for your presentation. Always good to see this kind of information to help us with our planning. It always strikes me, and this came up last night in the event I took part in with the Institute of Southern Georgia Bay, talking about that we not get too centralized. And so you're talking about training programs and people need transit to get to the training programs, but maybe we need to look at it from the other direction and look at spreading the training programs around a little bit so that they're available in more communities. We tend to centralize things just because of population and demographics and that sort of thing. But we really need to look at the fact that we just don't have a transit system yet that will serve that. So we need to take that into consideration and think about how we can move transit or move training programs around, because they are desperately needed throughout our county.
May I respond? And absolutely, your point is well taken. And so not just our organization, but other organizations, we actually move our training around. We offer both online and in person, and we usually go where there are jobs available. One of the challenges, though, is an employer may not always be open to the fact that somebody now they may have come across their desk before, and now they have made some changes and they're ready to be back out in the workforce. And so sometimes it doesn't always work for the individual living in a community, but that is the intention. So we have actually just spoken with the team at Ontario Works at Grey County, how we might be able to go into a specific community, do the training there, and be able to get people working in their community. So we are working on that idea. And as long as we can get enough people in that community to be trained, that's the idea of how we deliver training as 4-County Labour Market Planning Board.
Thank you very much. Anything else, Councillor Potter? Very good, thank you. Oops, you took down your hand. I was going to say Deputy Warden McQueen.
I guess I could speak to, I was thinking of time, just going, Mr. Warden, precarious employment. So a lot of people that do have home-based businesses they have contracts or whatever, but I'm also thinking that even in the construction business, you look for contracts. Are they considered precarious employment? I mean, it's sort of like you're either got a job or you don't have a job, is what you say about contracting. So is that more broad-based? I just never thought of it until you raised that point as yourself. So
I think the contracting that they're speaking about is your employees. So the people that are on your payroll would be considered precariously employed if they have a timed contract. So everyone on 4 counties payroll will be considered. However, yes, it will be considered precarious employment in the eyes of the federal government. But not so much a contract for a business, but a contract as an employee.
As an employee, yes. Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Desai, you're next.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden. Thank you, Gemma, for the presentation. I remember my first year in County Council 3 years ago. You had a presentation, and we were talking about similar things. That affordable housing was in a particular community, and the jobs were in a different community, and so it's good to see that we've come a fair way from then, when we didn't have the great transit route, to where we do have it today. An interesting point that you brought up was with regards to the dependability, and we've had those conversations around this table on when we've talked about the great transit route, that it does need to be something that people can rely on, people can depend on, and especially if considering that it started off as a pilot project, and there's certain routes that we sort of I think it's important to note that at the end of the day, the success of Great Transit Route is measured by the facts that you're bringing up today, not by whether it's made the county or the municipality a certain amount of money or not. So I thought that was an interesting point that you brought up. The next, and the question that I have is with regards to the demographics of the individuals who are considered precariously employed. You've mentioned younger, lower education, and a dependent child living at home. Did you also collect gender demographics? We've heard a number of times in December, I think it was John Farmer from Violence Prevention made a presentation to the council, and mentioned that women were affected at a disproportionately higher rate. Was that some data that you collected? And if so, was that the conclusions that you arrived at as well? Thank you.
Through the warden, and thank you for the question. We discovered some of that information, and so this year, in the next delivery of our contract, you will see more work around who has been affected more disproportionately in our region, and that I suspect it will include women, or I would say the dependent care, the person who's offering the care. So I wouldn't want to say, but only women, but certainly women have been affected. And we see it just recently in a conversation, we've heard that persons with disabilities have been significantly affected, and not that they don't have the abilities to go to work, but they have also been affected. So you will see that coming out. So the information you might be looking for isn't ready for you to give to you yet, but in the next 6 months or so, you will see more information coming that is very specific to our region. What we have seen is across the country and across the province, it is a factor, absolutely.
And if I may have a follow-up, Mr. Warden.
Absolutely.
Thank you. In addition to the gender demographics, would you also be collecting demographics around ethnicities and whether someone is a recent immigrant as compared to not being a recent immigrant or not being an immigrant at all? Is that how deep would you delve into the demographics is my question. Thank you very much.
Well, I think we have some direction. We were just given some direction. It's really important to know what our community wants to know about the research that we're doing. And so this is month 2 of our year, and there's lots of time to figure out, because what we do is we go out and we purchase the data that we need. So I will make a note of what you have just asked and speak with our consultant to make sure we can purchase those data, because we want it very specific to our region, and that's the only way we'll get it. So we want to talk about ethnicity and how long they've been in our communities, and diving into some deeper demographics, definitely.
You're good, Councillor Isai. Thank you. Next is Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you, Gemma, for speaking with County Council today. And this is just such an excellent report and so much information, and I look forward to hearing more about precarious employment. And it has occurred to me, Gemma, that I think there's a real educational opportunity here for employers in our region to, and some will certainly be aware, and perhaps some aren't, of the fact that they are providing precarious employment, and recognizing that we do have that low unemployment rate, and that there is a lot of difficulty for employers to secure employees and to retain them. And perhaps if there was a better understanding of the issues facing the staff that they're hiring, maybe there's a connection there that can help eliminate some of the issues that people in precarious employment are facing.
Absolutely. And I think now is the time to have those conversations, because traditionally some of our employers may have been able to tap into some other sources, and meaning temporary foreign workers or international workers. And now that we're in a pandemic lockdown situation, there's no more the availability to go anywhere. And we really need to put stock in and value in the people that are already in our community. And it could be as simple as ramping up their skills. They may not have the skills right now, but in a few weeks, in a couple of months, they may be able to do that. And so we need to have those conversations with our employers to say, let's look at who's here. They already live here. So housing has been removed as an issue. How do we ensure that we can engage them in the workforce? And I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Keaveney, we need to look at that conversation with our employers.
Anything else, Councillor Keaveney?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. No, not at this time.
Great. Madam Clerk, I don't see any other hands. Do you?
No, sir.
Okay, with that said, then I want to thank our delegate, Gemma. Thank you very much. Always interesting and dynamic. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, Council, we have been sitting for over an hour, so I'm going to suggest that we take a break and come back, let's say back at 11 sharp. And that puts you, Councillor Soever, on deck, okay? I'd ask you to just shut off your video and mute yourself, and we'll see you back at 11. Okay, it's 11 o'clock. Are we back online? Excellent, thank you. So I see just about everyone here. We're going to proceed with item number 3A. It's a notice of motion provided by Councillor Soever. It's been moved by Councillor Soever and seconded by Councillor Robinson. Councillor Soever, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And I'm bringing this motion in order that we have a little more clarity potentially in our procedural bylaw and to make sure that we receive in advance and have a chance to review material that is going to be presented at Council Committee of the Whole and committee meetings. So the provisions of our procedural bylaw suggest timelines, but they're unclear about the need to adhere from them, as I say in my motion. And so what I'm asking for is that we direct the clerk to bring back a report on how the procedural bylaw could be amended to include a provision that all materials, including presentation materials related to delegations and staff reports, be posted on the council meetings no later than 72 hours before the meeting. And that if the material is not available at the time the matter in the question be removed from the agenda unless the matter is determined to be urgent. obviously we don't want to delay urgent things, but we also want to make sure that we all have a chance to review all the material to be presented. And this motion, I know I've raised the issue several times with the CEO over the last year, and there was a commitment to do that, but at times there's still gaps. The latest was April 8th, when we talked about the Grey County Urban Road Connecting Links option. And there was a staff presentation that included a map that identified a road here in the town that was not mentioned in the staff report. So certainly, I did express my frustration last year as well when we did the strategic plan, and that we had very little time to actually review. And what I like to do is when I get the presentations, if there's something, is to follow it, the presentation and make notes on a paper copy. So, I think what we've done here in the town of Blue Mountains is we've instituted some very defined timelines. And so basically, delegations, as with the county, have to be in the week before the agenda is published. But then if something new appears on the agenda, people still have until the Friday noon to submit a request for delegation to speak to something that suddenly appeared. Because obviously we want to give people the chance to speak, to things they see appear on the agenda and submit a delegation. But on the other hand, we also want to make sure that we have a good chance to review what everybody's going to say, so that we have a fulsome discussion. When I was a CEO of a mining company, I was on the other side of this. My board wanted everything 7 days before, and I kept telling them, well, we're busy. And what they told me is, well, it doesn't take any longer to put the presentation together a week earlier than a week later. So it shouldn't affect, the number of hours that you have. So that's why I brought this forward, and I'm hoping that council will see fit to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Soever. And just for clarity's sake, I believe that you are specifically creating a distinction between the materials with respect to the staff reports versus the staff presentations. And in some instances, staff will prepare, say, a PowerPoint presentation that they do on the day of.
Yes.
And what you're saying by way of this motion, you're saying, I would like to have not just the staff report, but I would like to have the staff materials, meaning that PowerPoint presentation, I would like to have that in advance as well. That's if I understand your motion correctly, that's what you're aiming for.
Yes, Mr. Warden, that's correct. Because when you're following the presentation, it's a lot easier to follow the presentation and make notes on something that is similar to what you're seeing, rather than trying to flip back and forth through pages of a report and notes when the presentation may not exactly, follow the report, right?
Okay, thank you. I was just seeking clarity about what the intention of your motion was. Councillor Potter, you seconded this motion. Do you have anything to add?
Point of order, Mr. Warden. Christine Robinson, Councillor Robinson, it was I that seconded, and at the appropriate time, I would like to speak. Thank you.
My apologies on that. Yes, it was you. My apologies. So go ahead, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you, certainly I could support this motion and lended my name to seconding it. We're speaking of clarity of having the information before us as a county council, but it also addresses transparency to our Grey County residents, so that they not only see the report, any presentation slide deck that is being before us. So, it just adds to efficiency, sharing information, and I feel this is a great idea. So I would hope that our county colleagues would see fit to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Good morning, County Council. Mr. Warden, I can't think of a single time coming to County Council where I didn't feel prepared or didn't have enough information. Anytime I've had a question of the CAO, I have called her, and the number of times she has not taken my call is 0. So I just don't see the point of this. I won't be supporting the motion. And Madam Clerk, I'd like a recorded vote, please. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I can understand where Councillor Server is coming from. I mean, there's times where I've had to flip back between the presentation and the report. At the same time, I think that he's not wrong when he says that it takes the same amount of time whether you do the presentation a week early or a week later. But what it does do is it dictates the priorities a little bit when perhaps they don't need to be dictated. The presentations are there to sort of walk us through the report. They're not there, and they're not intended to provide the full picture. The full picture is in the reports. So I don't want to place further onuses on staff and further requirements for them to have a particular presentation ready well beforehand. And as far as importance, that's very subjective, I feel. I mean, for me, a soccer game could be important, whereas other members of council might not find that important. So it's very subjective. And that's why I can't support this. We do have the option as council, if we feel that we don't want to discuss a particular report because we did not have the materials beforehand, we do have the option of deferring that pending further information. And we can certainly use that tool that is at our disposal when we are in that position. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you, Councillor Desai. Councillor Potter, you're next.
Thank you. And I think we're in danger of once again lining up on some kind of teams here where what this is really about is making sure that the information that comes before council is available not only to councillors, let's remember, but to the public ahead of time. And I think that we strive to do that certainly in our council meetings, and I think that should be a goal for county council as well, is to make sure that everybody has the information. As Councillor Swever said, we had one situation where a map that was not included in the staff report was included in the presentation made at council. And that map included some information that would be important to people in our community. So that is the type of thing that we catch once in a while that worries us, that and sows, perhaps wrongly, but sows ideas of distrust within the public, where they wonder what's really going on when things just suddenly show up in a PowerPoint presentation that weren't in the staff report. So I don't think this is impossible bar to be met. I think it's something we all try to do, and I do think that that we need to work as a whole council and not line up in factions.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Deputy Warden McQueen, you're next.
Well, thank you, Mr. Warden. And I don't want to get into specifics of certain, I just think in the sense that it was mentioned about the open and transparency. I think in best practices, if we can do it, certainly there's circumstances that may arise that the information doesn't come, at the same time. But I think if we can strive to try to have it as soon as is available, not only to us, but the viewing public, I think that's something that we need to strive for. Something I commented last night on the session that I was on with a number of mayors was, what changes have you seen with council? I will say over the years of being on council, we have a public that's more engaged and does follow more of what we do. And I think from that aspect, I think we need to be very, very open, and the information that we are provided with is timely and is also there for the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Madam Clerk, I do not see any other hands.
Yes, Councillor Body.
Oh, my apologies, Councillor Body, you're on my second screen. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I think two questions. First for maybe Ms. Morrison. Do you update the procedural bylaw annually, or how often do you look at it?
Well, depends on the changes. Last year we updated it a few different times, but we normally strive to do that every 2 years.
Okay, and when's the next time then?
It will be before the next term of council. So it will be sometime between the end of this year and early next year.
Okay, so it's almost a year away, or half year. I think it was great that we got the 4 counties labor materials before, and that I agree that helps us see things. I think there's times maybe that somebody at the last minute thinks, gee, I can enhance my presentation by throwing in a map or throwing in something. And when we're dealing with external people presenting to us, I think sometimes it's hard to force them to get their materials in time. I'm not sure about the removing it if they don't have it within 72 hours that we're going to remove them from an agenda, because then it gets into the idea of trying to be transparent when something's on the agenda and all of a sudden it's not on the agenda, and maybe somebody's tuned in to see it knowing that it's supposed to have been heard, and then we don't hear it. So it can go both ways. I do agree with the sentiment. I really like getting stuff in advance, being able to see it. I'm not sure how far we go to enforce it, or how, whether that's a bit draconian or what the answer is. So I'm kind of two different minds. I'm not sure that I'll support it with that wording, but I kind of like the idea, if that sounds like a politician that can't make up his mind. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Soever? You're muted, sir.
Yes, and that's why I suggested that the clerk bring back a report on how we could do this, because I think there are practicalities. I know that we've become much more strict here, and county councillors will be familiar with our Ratepayers Association from the delegations they've made at county council. And we have told them too that, if it's not in by noon, sorry guys, it's not going to make it, because not only is it better for transparency for the public, but also it's fair to our staff. Our clerk was getting a lot of stuff on, Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock for a council meeting on Monday, or even on the weekend. Well, for her to put that, into the system and then have it ready to be pulled up during one of these virtual meetings, and also make it accessible and posted and all that. I mean, it was just being impractical. She was here, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night on some Fridays just to get the material ready. So we've told all groups, even our ratepayers, and said, look, guys, there's no reason, you guys have your chance, but know that these are the rules, and we're not going to make any exceptions unless it is something that's a truly urgent matter. But, it was just becoming, we have a very engaged public here. So when and we have public comment period and all that. So when we're getting things, a lot of things at the last minute, it becomes very unwieldy for our staff as well.
Thank you, Councillor Soever. I don't see any other hands, and if that's the case.
Mr. Warden, if I might.
Who is that? I can't tell who that is.
Councillor Milne.
Oh, Councillor
Sorry,
Milne.
I'm working from my iPhone, so I can't find the hands up thing. But anyway, I just thought I'd speak up. So thank you for taking my hand. county council deals with a lot of important stuff. And I can't help but think that our staff are top notch. They go the extra mile to make sure that council has the materials that they need to make an informed decision in front of them in adequate time. I understand the sentiment of the proposal here, but I want to retain staff's ability to be flexible, to change things out at the last minute. I can't support this. It puts more stuff to ask the clerk's department to put a report together like this for something that should be fairly self-evident. There's improvements they can make, they'll do it. I don't think we need to tell them this isn't grade school. So thank you, Mr. Warden, but I will not be supporting this resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Milne. Your connection is a little troublesome, but I think we heard the majority of what you had to say. I see a lot of people nodding, yes. Is there anyone else before we call the question? Okay, then perhaps Madam Clerk, Madam CAO.
You're on mute, Kim.
You're mute, yeah.
Sorry. Heather, you go ahead and speak, and then I'll go after you if I can.
Thank you very
much. I think it's
much.
good to clarify for everyone.
So we're talking about two different things here. One is delegations and one are staff presentations. The delegations, I think the clerk's team has been very diligent over the last year since Councillor Soever did bring it to our attention. I think it was early last summer to have all delegation presentations included in the agenda package. So we have been doing that, not only for council and committee of the whole, but also for our task forces and standing committees. I can say that all of the Hanover Owen Sound Task Force agendas had the presentations included in those for the many delegations that we had attending those meetings. So we have been very diligent in trying to include those in there. We do ask for them. We try and give council sufficient time to review the package. That's why we send it out 7 or 8 days ahead of time. And we do ask for the delegation presentations ahead of that so that they are included. The staff presentations really are their speaking notes to provide a visually appealing, simplistic way to walk council members through the report that was provided in the package. And that is the difference between the two. I don't know if Kim has anything more to add.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, to follow on Heather's comments, staff, our permanent record, if you will, the thing that we rely on is the text in the staff report. And we go to great lengths to ensure that those staff reports are as complete and as accurate as they can be. The one example that Councillor Soever is referring to is one of the maps around, I think, around the connecting links information that Pat brought forward. And in that case, it took them a bit of time to put together the latest version of the maps, which is why there was a change there. And in that particular case, all we were asking for was permission to have a process to talk about it more. It wasn't a situation where we were trying to make a decision that day. And as was alluded to earlier today, council always has the ability to say, I need more time. And that's happened in the last couple of months where someone said, I just really need more time with this information. We put our efforts into the written staff report. And if what council is wanting is more efforts on creating presentations and visually appealing transcripts. Right now, there's no requirement for staff to provide a PowerPoint presentation. Our efforts are in the staff report, in the documents. If council's direction to us is that you want PowerPoint presentations as a requirement of staff reports, then we need to have a discussion about that, and we need to think about what that looks like. Not all of the staff are, that's not maybe their strength, or they may not be resourced to do that. If we have to make some changes in order to enable that, then that's a conversation that I would like to have with everyone. So that's, just where things are right now. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Council, based on those remarks, are there any further questions or remarks? Okay, seeing none, then it's perhaps time to call the question. Madam Clerk, I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden. So Councillor O'Leary has called for a recorded vote regarding the notice of motion. Councillor Mackey,
Opposed?
Councillor Gamble, Councillor Gamble,
Sorry, opposed.
Councillor Burley,
Opposed.
Councillor Carlton,
Opposed.
Councillor McQueen,
Support?
Councillor Desai,
Opposed.
Councillor Patterson,
Opposed.
Warden Hicks,
Nay.
Councillor Clumpus,
Opposed.
Councillor Keaveney,
Opposed.
Councillor Body,
Opposed.
Councillor O'Leary,
Opposed.
Councillor Woodbury,
Opposed.
Councillor Millen,
Nay.
Councillor Soever,
In favor?
Councillor Potter,
In favor?
Councillor Robinson,
In favor.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Opposed.
The motion is lost 24-66.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, with that said, we're moving on in the agenda. We're on to item number 5, determination of items requiring separate discussion. Looking at that consent agenda, Council, is there anything that needs to be pulled? Seeing none, we will then move to the motion by Councillor Mackey and Councillor Patterson to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there anyone? Oh,
Mr.
Madam
Warden, I
Clerk?
just will note that Councillor Keaveney has stepped away
Oh, yeah.
regarding her declaration earlier.
Excellent. Thank you for reminding me about that. Okay, I call the question then. Is there anyone opposed to that motion? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Councillor Keaveney can join back again. Is she back with us?
Not quite.
Okay. How is she going to get notified?
She is back now.
She is back. Okay. Thank you. Okay, moving along then, we're on to item number 7. 7A is the Housing and Homelessness Plan Update. Anne-Marie's on deck. This item has been moved by Councillor Robinson and seconded by Councillor O'Leary. Anne-Marie, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Council. I am just going to share my report on screen just because there is a lot of information and some statistical information. This is our annual report looking at our housing and homelessness plan update for 2001 to 21, and basically looking at our current state of housing and homelessness in Grey County and an update on some of the strategies that we have. Just as a review and reminder about our role as a service manager is to manage the affordable and community housing units of the county, county owned. We administer funding to the nonprofit housing providers and assist with their in-house and I guess administration of their units. We also manage the wait list. So there is just one wait list that people have to apply for rather than having to apply to all the various affordable housing units. We provide a continuum of options. So we look at options right across the continuum from emergency housing, transitional and supportive housing, to rent geared to income and affordable rentals. So looking at providing services for our most vulnerable tenants of Grey County or residents of Grey County, and also those that are in that lower income bracket. And we also have to meet complex needs. So the province recognizes that there are unique and complex needs in each community. And we do this by setting out a 10-year housing and homelessness plan that deals with the priorities for our area. So a little bit about housing affordability in the area. Again, housing costs that are 30% or less of a person's gross income is considered affordable. A single person on OW, their affordable rent would be $219 based on their income. A person on Ontario Disability Support Program, it would be $364 a month. And for a senior that was earning about $2,000 a month on a fixed income, it would be around $600 a month. So we know that these rents do not exist in the private market. And so that's why affordable and community housing is an important part of our community. And we are the ones that are tasked with providing affordable rents through our community housing, our nonprofit housing, and our rent supplements. The average market rent right now, according to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, it is for a 1-bedroom in Grey County is $817 a month. We recognize that that is a bit low. We do see a range anywhere from $800 to about $1,200 a month. The CMHA or CMHC does not necessarily give direction on how they come up with this, but we do know that they do surveys for private landlords across the area, and it is a voluntary survey. We also recognize that our housing is not included in that number simply because we don't offer market rent. Our vacancy rate has continued to steadily decline. Our vacancy rate was 4.3% in 2014 and has declined to about 1% in 2020. 4% is considered a healthy interest rate where there's enough supply to meet demand. So obviously between high market rent and a low vacancy rate, that poses a problem for people that are looking for affordable housing. The need for affordable housing, this is our looking at our wait list. The wait list, as I've talked to in the past, is actually quite difficult to determine exactly how many people in Grey County are looking for housing because of the way it's set up. Anyone in Ontario can put their name on every list in Ontario for affordable housing, and they can also pick every housing unit in Grey County. So it is a little bit more difficult. The way we tend to look at it is that if you're on our wait list and you have an address in Grey County, we're assuming that you're interested in housing in Grey County. We do recognize that we do have some counties that are on our outskirts, and there might be some people that are applying from those too. Right currently we have 620 Grey County residents that are on our wait list. We have 74 people with no current address. We have 27 residents in Bruce County, and we have 192 residents from outside Grey County. So that could be looking at Waterloo, Barrie, Toronto, York, Durham, other county and other city areas. I've also broken down by where we have affordable housing. So for instance, Chatsworth and surrounding area, we would have 8 residents with that address that are looking for affordable housing, just to give you an idea of where our need is in our county. I did also have a look at Collingwood, and there were 6 applicants on our wait list that had Collingwood addresses. Housing availability. The Grey County, we provide subsidy to 611 units of housing and 66 more households with provincial rent supplements. So we have 997 units of community housing through Grey County Housing, 552 through our nonprofit housing. We have 72 rent supplements. We have 20 rent supplements for transitional housing, and we have 66 provincial portables. So We do have quite a bit of housing that we already subsidize. I think it's around 1,667 units. So it was in 2020. But we also recognize that even though we do provide quite a bit of subsidized housing, that there is still a need for more housing. So what did happen in 2020 was the creation of our Affordable Housing Task Force and an action plan. And I know that there's been lots of communication on that, but I have attached the link to the action plan in this report. Some of the highlights of some of our future thoughts for creating more housing would be increasing the number of rent supplements. So rent supplement works if a person is in a private market unit that works for them, except for they just have trouble affording it. So we can help by providing a rent supplement to that landlord to ensure that the rent is affordable. Working with our nonprofit housing providers, right now the money that is coming from federal and provincial government is focused in on providing funding for nonprofit housing providers. Reason being that they are the ones that are already involved in housing, they're managing it, they've got experience with builds, they have experience with people that may need supports to maintain their housing, and we know that they're in it for the long haul. So any money that we put in there is going to remain affordable for a very long time. There may be some opportunities with our long-term care redevelopment with the seniors housing opportunity. We do have some Grey County housing opportunities. So looking at our portfolio and expanding or renovating. And then of course, we look at our community improvement plans. And although we recognize that, there is a demand for affordable and housing, we know that the business case is not always there for a private market to develop or operate it. So, some of the barriers might be that cost to the land, a cost to building, permits and application costs, development charges, and maybe there's even some policies that may not support affordable housing, such as low density and low height provisions, or maybe not preventing secondary units. So when we look at our community improvement plans, we can look at some ideas such as a land bank or waiving fees and incentives that may provide opportunity for a private landlord to add some affordable housing units into their development. We also have now a affordable housing fund that will consist of our 1% annual levy contribution, any funds that we receive from our federal and provincial counterparts, and then of course looking at any divestment of property funds. And this would be used to create new affordable housing, renovate, and possibly through rent supplements. In the last 3 years, we have funded 57 units of affordable housing, looking at community living, Owen Sound Housing Company, and our Durham build with the Trumbles. We also know that there are other housing options that are available for 2020 to 21. We have 60 units of affordable housing that will be completed in early 22. We have 10 transitional units that are to be completed by the end of this year. We have that were started in 2020 to be completed at the end of this year. We have 66 portable housing rent supplements that started in 2020, 30 more starting this year, and we'll also have 30 other rent supplements starting this year. And through our Affordable Housing Action Plan, we've identified 20 plus affordable attainable housing possibilities that are in various stages of readiness. Looking at possibly 30 units in Durham, 90 units in Owen Sound, 30 units in Owen Sound, 50 in Dundalk, and 15 in Hanover. And again, more information obviously will come to council as readiness and funding becomes available for these projects. Reducing homelessness, another large part of Grey County's priorities in our 10-year housing and homelessness plan. We are now a housing first community, meaning that finding housing is seen as our primary focus. And then by supporting a person with wraparound services, we can look at what are some of the issues that might prevent them from maintaining their housing. Housing first is really the only methodology that has been able to demonstrate measurable success in addressing chronic homelessness in Canada and in Ontario. We work with a number of partners and fund all of these partners to assist with people that are experiencing homelessness, such as our Canadian Mental Health Association, Y Housing, Safe and Sound, our nonprofit housing providers, Mawukwadong, and our Ontario Aboriginal Health Access Center, and many of our other community partners that provide food and other necessities for people experiencing homelessness. Our housing system has emerged and evolved over the last few years. We now have a 24-hour, 7 days a week emergency short-term program that is run by the Y Housing, 211 Community Connections, and Safe and Sound. This year, we've seen a 160% increase in stays and 300% increase in costs due to COVID-19 compared to our 2019 statistics. We know that there's more individuals accessing. There's been less couch surfing, which has been happening, which has been good during COVID, but it has also brought more people forward that need the services, and stays have been longer. And cost to stay in motels has also increased. So that has been part of our 300% increase in cost. We're also finding more people coming from cities and other areas for various reasons, whether they think that there's more opportunity for housing up here, or due to COVID-19 are not wanting to stay in shelters and would prefer more of a motel sort of idea. In those cases, Y Housing and other supports have worked with them to really explain what the situation is up here, that there is not access to permanent housing. And really, if your supports are back in your home community, then that's probably where you should remain. We have a homelessness response table. This started in 2020. It is working with various partners. And what it does is it looks for that real-time a real-time list for people to get onto so that we know who is looking for housing. We have funded 2 positions through a coordinator and an outreach worker through the Canadian Mental Health Association. So referrals come in from various community agencies. The by names list is, again, that prioritized individuals that are experiencing chronic homelessness. And then we look at finding housing that suits them and putting supports around them. This is for all of Grey County. We currently have, the program just started in February of 2021. There have been 33 people that have been referred that are experiencing chronic homelessness. So they have been homeless for more than 6 months of 1 year. Currently 3 people have been housed with supports. And of course, while they are waiting for housing, there are supports provided to them too. So this just allows us to find out more about who in our community and needs that services and supports. We still maintain our housing with our 5 housing with support providers to 85 individuals at a cost of $740,000. And of course, this is true supportive housing with access to assistance for meals, medications, laundry, and other activities. We've maintained our sustainable housing benefit to allow people to continue to live where they are by helping them out with rental arrears and utility costs. And if they do have to move, then we will provide assistance with last month's rent. I've provided lots of information on our social services relief fund initiatives, and we're very grateful to the province to have those to allow us to provide services throughout COVID-19 and into recovery phase. And last, I'd just like to talk a little bit about measuring the outcomes, how we're doing measured against what we said we were going to do in our housing and homelessness plan. So if I skip down to this part, some of our outcomes that we looked at, we wanted to provide over the next, from 2014 to 2022, 200 units of affordable housing through rent supplement, homeownership, and new affordable rental. Currently, we have 363 affordable units that we've been able to provide since 2014. And I've added another bullet on there that we now have an action plan moving forward to look at hopefully another 200 plus rentals of affordable and attainable housing. We stated that we were going to have 100 renovations and repairs for homeowners, and we're now, as of 2020, up to 122. We've stated that it's a priority to focus in on preserving the social housing that we do have with our nonprofits and ourselves. And by doing our building condition assessments, which will be completed in June, we will be able to continue to work on our capital budgets. We also want to preserve, we know that the agreements that we have with most of our nonprofits are starting to end as of 2022 to 27, and we are committed to entering into an agreement with each and every one of them in order to support maintaining the housing. And we wanted to preserve the transitional housing units that we have by continuing funding. We want to increase the number of successful tenancies and prevent evictions in social housing. So we looked at creating a tenant services team by adding coordinator, a tenant services coordinator, and a community relations worker. We are now able to support people that live with us that may not be able to maintain that housing if they don't have appropriate resources and supports. And looking at our interagency system for those experiencing homelessness, it really has evolved into the fact that we now have a 24-hour system. We have a homelessness response table, and it is our goal to decrease by 50% chronic homelessness. And so that's what we're looking to do by creating those 10 new transitional units, continuing to work with the Canadian Mental Health Association and other partners. And we also wanted to create supportive housing ourselves. We now provide 20 rent supplements to Canadian Mental Health Association and Y Housing. We fund to outreach workers at CMHA and Y Housing. And we also have created 10 units of our own. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. There we go. Okay, Council. Any questions? Councilor Mackey.
Thanks, Mr. Warden, and thanks very much, Anne-Marie, for all that information. Can you just touch upon the eligibility requirements, dig down a little deeper into those, and whether or not it's only means tested or whether there's any needs test, built into it? I'm thinking of someone that is already in a rental accommodation, but it's maybe 50% of their income, as opposed to someone that's homeless. Are they moved up the list because they don't have any place? So can you just help me out with that, please?
Certainly. So it is income tested. So a person does have to fall under a certain threshold. I believe for a 1-bedroom, it's around $30,000 a year and less. The majority of people that live with us probably make about $21,000 and less. But the only priority we have is for someone who is experiencing, who's a victim of domestic violence. They would move to the top of the list. Otherwise, everyone is on that list for rent geared to income housing, and it does go chronologically. The only other program that we have started is with the homelessness response table. So in that case, if a person is chronically homeless, so they have been homeless for more than 6 months of a year, then they do get priority housing when they go through that program. And even when in that program, it doesn't necessarily say that they're going to get housing right away, but the difference is that they require supports. So it is somebody that will have a worker or various workers or multiple workers that will be with them. So that's just started in our community, and there is specific housing through Canadian Mental Health Association and others that provide supports for them, and through ourselves by the 10 new transitional units that we have being built this year.
Thanks very much. Mr. Warden, can I just follow up, please?
Please go right ahead.
So Anne-Marie, based on the means testing, with the rent increases, and property values going up the way they are we able to project out with the new rental costs, the size of the wait list going forward?
So the province does take into consideration income and whatnot. So income might go up. That doesn't ever seem to be our problem. It's probably more, I think our wait list will be impacted a little bit. But in saying that, we do see ebbs and flows in our wait list. And last year over this year, I think we were up probably about 15%. And that's, normally we're up about 10%. So there was a little bit of a difference there. I think with the CERB and other benefits that have allowed people to maybe stay in their housing a little bit, we haven't seen that influence yet, but we may see that in 2021 when a lot of those benefits are no longer available.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Desai.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden. Thank you very much for the report, Anne-Marie. I know I'd emailed a few questions to you earlier, and I thank you for the answers. Another question that I had is with regards to the rent supplements. Now, there's no argument that it is an important program, and it's absolutely needed in our community, especially given the wait list that we're looking at. My question is, do you think that by providing a rent supplement that we're maybe artificially propping up the market rent in Grey County? Because if we're providing the rent supplement, then there's people who are able to make that rental payment. And just your thoughts on that. And the other question is with regards to the wait list itself and the number of units that we're projecting. Should we perhaps be looking at being more aggressive in building affordable units? We're looking at about just under 1,000 applicants on the wait list, and in terms of projecting the number of units we're going to build, we're not coming nearly close to that. So should we perhaps be more aggressive on that front? Thank you.
With regards to rent supplements, the program is limited as the number of funds. So for instance, most of them are around $250 a month. So if you've got a senior who's again fixed income and is $600, the most that we're able to fund them is around $250 to $300. So, you know, that it's not going to prop up the rents. They're still going to be spending a little bit more than what they should be. And we only use rent supplements when the person is housed appropriately too. If they're in housing that does not suit them, then we do look to maybe providing that rent supplement in the meantime and getting them into something that might suit them, such as seniors housing with supports or things like that. As for the wait list, so the wait list is 900 and something, but we know that when we offer housing to someone in Toronto, in Windsor, they often don't accept it. At some point, they've been told that there's housing up here. So we do look at that true number as the people of Grey County residents. It's really the only way that we have of determining. We had a gentleman from, I believe it was Windsor, we offered the other day a place in Holstein, and he had no idea where Holstein was. I'm sorry, Stucky, but he didn't. And so there's sometimes that it's just not, someone has told them to put them on the list. So it is very difficult to determine what that need might be. I tend to look at it as I'm building housing for people that I know are going to say yes on the wait list, and those are the ones that live in Grey County. So if we looked at even that 600 mark, I think it's very difficult for us to say that we're going to be very aggressive because the funds just aren't there. There is not a good business case when it comes to building affordable housing. It's very difficult to make it work. When it comes to that lower rent, when you have a mortgage that you have to pay off and you know that you have to provide a lower rent for somebody, it's very difficult to find that extra funding in order to make it work. So I think what the Affordable Housing Task Force has looked at is basically, here's what we have right now, here's the funds that we're hoping to get in the future. And if we keep looking for those opportunities and building up the funds, and still looking for opportunities, that we might be able to provide some of that. We know we're going to have to build some housing our own. We know that our nonprofits are wanting to build. So we're taking a look at all of those opportunities that we have right now, but it does come down to funding.
As always.
And I mean, with Holstein, I hear they don't send their best to Grey County anyway. So thank you for that, Anne-Marie. I mean, I understand the business case. My question, I guess, and maybe this is for the council table, is whether we as council should be looking at providing that. Since the start of this year, I've had two individuals who are seniors who've called me and said that they're just unable to find housing. They're being evicted because their landlord wants to do renovations, and so they've been given a notice, and they're going to have to leave. And in the other case, it was the landlord's child moving back in, which understandably, I struggle with the fact that. And again, this is a question at budget time, but should we be looking at spending more? At the end of the day, we are a level of government, and our main reason for our existence is not making a profit, but it's providing a service. And there's clearly a need for service. And should we be providing that if the private sector cannot come in? Because I do really think that housing being such a huge issue doesn't bode well for us as a society. Thank you very much, Mr. Warden.
Thank you. Anne Marie?
Yes, I think the other part of it too is continuing to ensure that the provincial and federal government are doing their part. You know, it takes all levels of government to look after housing and homelessness. I know that our sector has been, you know, very verbal, very much saying that it does take all levels of government to provide funding in order for this to work. We were very fortunate last year to receive funding at the end of the year that was remaining because we had a project ready to go. That seems to be the way to get things built, but that shouldn't be the way. There should be that continuous flow of guaranteed funding to allow us to plan and to allow us to get projects ready so that we can move forward. So I do think that there might be some advocacy on the part of council that to the provincial government that would be beneficial.
Thank you. Councillor Potter, you're next.
Thank you. And I just wanted to support Councillor Desai's suggestion that we be a little more aggressive about this because we can wring our hands all we want. We can have all the reports we want, but it's time that we actually take some action. And I'm not saying we haven't up till now. I'm just saying that we have to commit the county to being more aggressive on this over the next 5 years, 10 years, whatever. Anne Marie, what would set that process in motion, do you think? Because we need to have some way of determining what the real needs are, giving us some focus on what it is we need to do, figuring out where we need to put these projects, and go from there, because Councillor Desai is right. We do need to get moving on this.
Before you go, Anne Marie, if I might, Councillor Potter, what do you mean about by being more aggressive?
Getting some projects in the works and people moving into them, because I hear all the time, we are working on our own attainable housing project here, but then we hear from people, what about affordable housing? What about the people that can't afford attainable housing? So we have the need here. I'm sure everybody does, and we can't just talk about it anymore.
So by projects, I'm sorry, I'm pressing you on this. By projects, I think you're referring to both attainable as well as affordable projects.
Well, both, but I think the affordable housing is, in my view anyway, is more crucial because they can't afford anything, and they're the people who need the most support.
Thank you for that, Anne Marie.
Yeah, if I could just share my screen again here. So I think one of the things that you're looking at, Councillor Potter, and that's when we did the housing action plan through our affordable housing task force, we did determine what was needed and where it was needed. And our wait list certainly does support that too. If we look at it, this is where we need affordable housing for people that are on our wait list. We recognize that there's a very large population in Owen Sound, Meaford, Hanover, and Durham that do need the housing. A lot of the other areas, you know, maybe some rent supplements would help out, or working with some of our private developers and getting some of them to include some affordable housing units could look at that. So one thing that we did look at was coming up with a plan of where we need to. So we have right now 57 units that have been developed. We have 60 that will be available that are already in development right now in Owen Sound. We have 10 that are in development right now for transitional. We added 60 and we'll add 30 more and 30 more. So there'll be 60 more units. So that's about 130 units that are coming on board this year and next year. So we are aggressively looking at what we can do. I agree totally with you that we could do more. Again, it's based on funding and opportunity. So then we're looking at what do we have in varying levels of readiness. We know for a fact that we have in Owen Sound a nonprofit that is ready to build, shovel ready, and just looking for funding. We will have funding for that for them. They're ready to start at the end of 2022, and those funds will be available for them. Next, we have 90 units that are interested in being built. And again, it's looking at funding and getting people into that being ready stage. We have our own housing in Dundalk, in which we have a lot beside which we would like to build more affordable housing there. We have 30 units in Durham that we might be able to build as part of our long-term care. So continuing to look for those opportunities, and by having our affordable housing fund now actually having some funds that we can grow, that is how this will work. So if we want to look at it more aggressively, we can, but I think we have identified projects that are ready to go. And again, it's just a matter of means and finding out what the province and federal's thoughts are when it comes to providing us funding too. So.
Councillor Potter, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, couldn't get to my button. So it's that old thing again, money, and what you're saying really is we have the plan, we know what we need to do, we just need to be willing to put the money into the budget to make it happen. Is that about the sum of it?
It is. I mean, we do have some money, which we hadn't had before, which has allowed us to move forward with the projects that we're looking at this year and next year. But certainly moving forward, it is always funding. Again, that business model of just building affordable housing without funding up front doesn't work. And right now too, build costs are so high that kind of skews our ability to, maybe adequately say, here's the exact amount of money that we'll need. But certainly at the Affordable Housing Task Force, we did look at a number of scenarios and what it might cost to build. For instance, the one nonprofit in Owen Sound looking at 30 units, and here's the amount of money that we're going to need in order to provide them up front so that the build will be sustainable and work.
That's all, Warden, and thank you, Anne Marie, and thank you for your report.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. I don't see any other hands. Looking at my second screen. So if that is the case, then perhaps it's time to call the question on the motion to receive this housing and homelessness plan. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Thank you very much. Great report, good discussion. Very important issue. All right. Item number 8, we're dealing with other business now and AMO delegations. Kim, perhaps I can turn things over to you.
You're on mute, Kim.
There we are. I'm so sorry. All right. In an effort to facilitate our discussion this morning, I've pulled together some ideas from your staff team around delegations that we might want to pursue for our AMO meeting coming up in August. As well, I did talk to the CAOs and understand what some of the other delegations are that have been discussed in your individual municipalities. So I'll just go through these if I can. So as far as county requests, there's a potential to request a delegation with the Ministry of Health for long-term stable funding for community paramedicine, and to also request further coordination of mandates and oversight and decision-making for the community paramedicine program. You'll recall, Council, that we have the original CP program that is under the Ministry of Health, and then recently we're provided funding to support long-term care and keeping people that were waiting for beds in long-term care successfully at home. And we I think the hope by everyone is that those programs will eventually come together, but that there's a clear oversight and decision-making around delegation of medical decisions, et cetera. Another potential delegation would be to update the Ministry of Long-Term Care on the status of our long-term care redevelopment projects, and also to provide any response or comments related to the findings and recommendations in Justice Morocco's Long-Term Care Commission report. Another delegation, a request to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for additional funding for the development of affordable housing in coordination with health regarding resources for supportive housing. So really relevant to our last discussion. I thought that broadband might come up in our discussion this morning, and certainly I wanted you to be aware that Western Ontario Wardens Caucus has indicated that this remains a key priority for that whole group, and they will be looking to additional broadband funding through their efforts. If we wish to join in on that or have a separate delegation, I'll leave that to you. And finally, a delegation to the Attorney General highlighting the success of the virtual court process in Grey Bruce, and just indicating our desire to see that ability be retained on a more permanent basis after the COVID situation is more resolved. We know from your individual discussions that there is a Ministry of Health delegation being requested for additional physician allocation in small urban and rural communities, to MTO around the regional approach for comprehensive transportation planning across all of Grey, Bruce, and Simcoe. Also MTO and connecting links and better alignment and planning around long-term capital projects, and also a delegation of environmental support for climate action, to the Municipal Affairs and Housing around stabilizing the OMPF, economic development, job creation, and trade, about economic development plans post the pandemic. And finally, and this is one where there was fairly unanimous support amongst all of the CAOs, was to go to the Ministry of Finance and the new FSRA around the cost of and access to appropriate insurance. I think all of us are seeing this. It's been a long-standing issue at the AMO table, I believe. And I just wanted to highlight for Council's benefit that one of the recommendations in Justice Morocco's Commission report is that the province needs to intervene in the market to ensure that long-term care facilities can continue to obtain coverage. And certainly in Grey County, we have had some challenges in getting the appropriate insurance coverage for student placements, and especially when that is so necessary to ensuring that we have the health human resources that we need in the future. I think it's important that the province ensure that can be appropriately insured. So I'll stop sharing my screen now if you'd like, but those are the four that I thought Council might be interested in from Grey County. So health around community paramedicine, long-term care, municipal affairs and housing around additional housing resources, and Attorney General around continued ability to offer a virtual court process. So I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Kim. Council. Any input here? Councilor Mackey?
Thanks, Mr. Warden, and thanks, Kim, for those. Within the presentation that's proposed to the Ministry of Long-Term Care, do you think we'd be able to push the ministry on making the final recommendations based on the commission report for our redevelopment options? We're going to need to know, number of residents per room, size of rooms, general layout of new facilities. I know that's going to take some time, and we have a little bit of time right now, but I'm just wondering if that's an opportunity to stress to the ministry the need for them to make their final decisions around the commission's report.
Thanks, Councillor Mackey. So I'll make note of those design standards and the need to have some further confirmation of those in a timely way. I'll add that. Thank you.
Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I just wanted to once again reiterate the importance of the insurance issue. Yesterday in the CanadianUnderwriter.ca, there was an article about at one point there was 10 firms that offered municipal insurance. That has gone down to about 3 or 4, out of which there's about 1 or 2 that's looking to get out of it. So we're dangerously headed towards a monopoly situation, which doesn't end well for anyone. So I think it's important that we continue to sort of beat the drums on the insurance issue, or soon enough we're not going to be able to insure municipalities. And again, this stems from the issue of joint and several liability. At one point, AMO did have recommendations that were made to the Attorney General, and not sure what's happened with those, but it's certainly a drum we need to continue to beat. Thank you very much for that report, Kim, and thank you very much, Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Councillor Desai. I do not see any other hands. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Robinson.
Oh, my apologies. Councillor Robinson, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Warden. And I'm just looking to our clerk if we're needing a formal resolution on this. And if that is the case, I would certainly move. This is a very comprehensive list to be in front of the ministries at the AMO conference. And I certainly support all of the topics that will be face-to-face with the ministries. So if there is a need for a resolution, I certainly could move that. Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk.
So yes, there is a need for a resolution. We need that from council to support the AMO delegations that CAO Windgrove provided.
Okay,
Mr.
so
Warden,
moved by,
so moved.
moved by Councillor Robinson and seconded by Councillor Burley, that we make requests for delegations as outlined in the document provided by our CAO. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed to that motion? And seeing none, I'll say that that is carried. Thank you very much. Is there any other business? Sorry, I should have said thank you to Kim for bringing that document forward. Thank you very much for that. It's very helpful. I don't see anyone raising their hands for other business. We're moving on to item number 9, any notices of motion? And seeing none there, looks like we're ready to adjourn. So item number 10, motion for adjournment is moved by Councillor Burley and seconded by Councillor Gamble. Anyone opposed? That's it. It's carried and we are done. Thank you so much. 12:09. Enjoy your day. It's a really nice one.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.